Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for coming. This is about 99% more people than I thought would show up. So thank you very much. And welcome. It says welcome and thank you very much for coming today. Okay. And do I have any elected official or agency heads that I need to recognize? So, oh, Marianne's Representative Dunwell is here. Okay. Yes. Anybody else? Okay. I've been passionate about the elections process my whole entire life, starting when I worked on my first campaign in the 7th grade, the first time I voted as an 18-year-old senior in high school till now. I am convinced that elections are the most important government service. Where else does every single adult in this country have the option and right to choose which way the state and country move? Which is why I fiercely believe that we have a responsibility not only to vote, but also to educate and engage our youngest generations in the voting process. I've been at this job for 8 years now, though I've been a public service my entire adult life. As a teacher, a school librarian, legislator, the superintendent of public instruction, and now as a Secretary of State. I'm proud of the progress we have made together, which is the reason I invited all of you here to celebrate the hard work and success as a state. Just think, it was less than 100 years ago that women still did not have the right to vote. And now, here we are. I am the first woman to be elected Secretary of State in Montana, and along with 2 other women, make up the 5-member executive branch. It's an amazing thing that we can come so far and do so much in such a short amount of time. This hard-fought right wouldn't have been possible if not for all the women and men who stood up for what they believed in and voted to make it happen. Those selfless people fought for the rights of their children and generations to follow. I am so grateful to them because they are the reason I am standing here today. My hope is that I have instilled that same sense of hope and pride in the students whose classrooms I have visited these past 2 decades. As chief election official for the state of Montana, there is nothing more important to me than the rights of our citizens to engage in the electoral process. And I'm talking about every qualified citizen, young, old, wealthy, poor, rural, urban, and people of all colors. There should be no barriers to any Montanan to be able to participate in our elections. I'm very happy to report at this inaugural event that the state of Montana's elections is very strong and something we should all be proud of. We have known this for some time, but just a few weeks ago, we received confirmation when the Pew Election Center, a well-respected nonpartisan research center that specializes in social science research, released its annual Election Performance Index, a comprehensive assessment of election administration in all 50 states and DC. Montana was ranked number 12 nationwide. That's a major improvement from 2008, the year before I took office, when we were ranked 29th. In 8 years, we've gone from the middle of the pack to one of the top performers in the nation. We've done it with hard work and collaboration, not only from the folks in my office, they're all sitting up here with their ties on and they look so cute. They're so cute. They're so cute. And I forgot where I was. Not only from the folks in my office, but from a pair of very good governors and some great legislators, but also with the help of 56 very capable county election administrators who do the bulk of elections work and often don't get the recognition they deserve. In the most recent cycle, which was the 2012 post-general election through the 2014 general election, our county election administrators processed 193,077 registration forms. and over 250,000 signatures for ballot issue petitions. That's a ton of paperwork, and not to mention many, many, many hours. And because we don't have online voter registration, each one of the 193,077 registrations had to be entered by hand. Let's also thank the many poll workers who work on election day. Our state elections are run by Montana citizens committed to everyone having the right to vote. That is why we have great confidence in our elections, and you should too. There are some very specific reasons that our elections are so highly ranked, and I want to talk about some of these. I would say generally, from a policy standpoint, we've worked very hard the last 8 years to make voting convenient, accessible, secure, accurate, and to make the entire election process transparent. Let's first talk about convenience. Some states make voting and registration full of hassles. In Montana, we've done the opposite. We try to make it as convenient as possible for the citizens to cast their votes because we want our state to be governed by the people, all of the people. We have a number of features that help us accomplish this. For example, we have a top-notch system for voting by mail, and it's been a real game changer. Not every state lets people vote by mail. In many states, you need an excuse to vote absentee. But in Montana, absentee ballots are now the norm, with almost 2/3 of voters currently using them. That number has grown from 15% in 2000 to 60% in the 2014 general election. Just think about it. For 60% of those voting, their mailbox is their ballot box. We hope to have another record number of voters this November who receive their ballots early, have time to ponder it in the convenience of their own home, doing research on candidates and issues, and then sending their ballots back. No worries about getting to the correct polling place, no worries about bad weather hindering their ability to get to the polls. After all, it's Montana in November. Another convenience we provide is the ability for a citizen who misses the deadline for regular registration to register or vote at any time in the month before Election Day. For almost a full month, a voter can visit the county election office, or some counties, a satellite office, in person to register and cast a ballot. Or you can register and then take your ballot home and vote it at your convenience. Again, not every state has this option, and Montana was one of the first. But it helps make voting convenient for Montanans and guarantees that no qualified citizen is denied their right to vote because of an arbitrary deadline, and so we do it. And the results speak for themselves. Not only does Montana have one of the highest turnouts of registered voters in America, but we also have some of the shortest wait times on Election Day. In fact, the Pew study found our average wait time on Election Day, it should be a drum roll or something. The Pew study found our average wait time on Election Day is 2.1 minutes. Compare that to what we saw in Florida in 2008 and 2012 during the presidential elections. There were people waiting in line for 8 hours. 8 hours. I don't know about you, but I'll take 2.1 minutes over 8 hours. So even though I'm retiring at the end of the year, I don't think I'll be retiring to Florida. Because unlike Montana, Florida is a state where politicians put up barriers to make voting more difficult and tedious. We try to tear barriers down. And Florida isn't the only place. Take, for example, the issue of voter ID requirements. You might have seen that the Kansas Secretary of State created a new rule that says you need a passport or a birth certificate to vote in a state election. This is done for political purposes, to suppress voter turnout. In Montana, we've done exactly the opposite. We aim for 100% turnout and try to create universal convenience. Every election, reporters try to get me to predict what the turnout will be. My answer is always the same. I tell them I'm not satisfied unless 100% of eligible Montanans vote. I know it's not going to happen, but I'm an optimist and I don't like having that goal less than 100%. So instead of requiring passports, we allow people to present a normal piece of identification that they have, as long as it's valid and proves who they are. Most people use a driver's license, but we also allow tribal ID cards, student ID cards, and in some cases, alternate forms for people such as the very poor or the elderly who might not be able to afford a Montana ID. And the result is that we have one of the highest turnouts among registered voters of any state in America, while also having some of the lowest wait times on election day. In addition to convenience, we strive for accessibility. What does that mean? Well, in some cases, we make a point of reaching out to special populations of voters, going the extra mile to help them vote if they need special assistance or have unique circumstances. The most important of these are the young men and women serving in the military. I'm so grateful for these folks and the sacrifice they make every single day into this country. One sacrifice they shouldn't have to make is their right to vote, which is why we did something about it. The Pew study ranked our military and overseas voting programs as one of the top 5 in the nation. For those of you unfamiliar with military voting, federal law requires every state to have a program to make sure that our troops can register and vote in a convenient way. Normal procedures don't work because, after all, it's difficult and time-consuming to get someone a ballot if they are on patrol in Afghanistan or Iraq. So we designed an electronic system that soldiers can use with a computer or a smartphone, and it's been a huge success. This system has allowed us to achieve one of the lowest ballot rejection rates of any military voting system in the country. Every election, we receive heartfelt thanks from military voters. Some of the comments we have received from our uniformed soldiers are, and I'm going to read these to you because I just love them. First one is, I am the voting assistance officer for the 48th Military Police Company, Montana Army National Guard, currently serving in Kandahar, Afghanistan. I am very proud to say that Montana has one of the most updated and user-friendly absentee voting systems in place compared to other states. This became apparent in talking to other military personnel from other states. Please inform your staff that we appreciate their service to Lewis and Clark County in helping soldiers vote. Another one, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for making this process so easy for me. As a military member, it is very difficult to find time to keep up with things like this and accomplish them in the required timelines. Being a resident of Montana my entire life, I am very grateful for all the benefits the state extends to us, active duty personnel. Keep up the great work, and thank you again. And lastly, this system is really useful and makes voting for me easy and reliable. I am currently in Belgrade, Serbia, and in November I will be in Kabul, Afghanistan. My colleagues from other states only wish that their state system were half as good as ours. And we received many, many more positive comments. Some countries that they voted from were Afghanistan, Botswana, Egypt, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Serbia, Turkey. In all, we had people who voted from 65 countries. And that's just the 2016 primary election. Another group we made an effort to help is a group of voters with disabilities who must overcome great challenges on a daily basis. In addition to having a special machine at every polling location across the state for voters with disabilities, we have a new program this year called the Electronic Ballot Request System, or EBRS for short. Most individuals with disabilities have special assistive computers in their homes, and they can now receive an electronic ballot that they can fill out using their own personal computer equipped for their specific disability. We hope it will make their lives a little easier and will enable them to exercise their voting rights without too much difficulty. And the third group that we've worked hard to assist is American Indians. As many of you know, our state and many other states have a history of discriminating against American Indians' voting rights going back to when Montana was first settled. Today, under federal law, We are obligated to make sure that the poorest and most underserved American Indian populations have the same ability to cast a vote as everyone else. Last October, I directed all counties with American Indian populations to set up early voting offices on reservations. The result is that we now have 13 satellite offices. And we call them satellite offices because they are literally satellite branches of the county election office, which is normally where one would go to register or vote early. In 2016, we have 13 offices on 6 reservations across 10 counties, providing early voting and registration services more than any state in America. We are now a leader nationally in protecting ballot access for American Indians, and I hope other states look to what we've done. Now, I've talked a lot about the good ideas we've implemented, but I've also had to fight against a lot of bad ideas. Fight against people who try to make the system a lot worse for Montana citizens. Consider, for example, the value of an open primary. In many states, you have to list your party affiliation when you register to vote. In Montana, we don't require that because it violates privacy, and so we allow people to vote in whichever primary they choose. We just finished a long legal battle in federal court fighting a lawsuit by activists who wanted to close the primary and force voters to publicly declare party loyalty in order to be eligible to vote. And happy to report that just a few months ago, the case was dismissed, and so the open primary, which by the way has been around for over a century, is alive and well. We're proud of that victory and take our work to protect voting rights very seriously. So I think you will agree that Montana has elections that are open and accessible, but we also have a system that is safe, secure, and accurate. Let's go over some of these aspects. First, despite what some alarmists like to allege, voter fraud in Montana is virtually non-existent. My office maintains the Fair Election Center, and I can tell you that in 8 years, we've received no verified fraud complaints. The reason is that we have safeguards, the most important of which is a centralized voter database that serves as a registry of all voters. The system is securely integrated with the Attorney General's driver's license data at the Justice Department to allow us to confirm registrants' identity. Everything that happens at a polling location or count center, such as the counting of votes, is transparent and viewable by any member of the public. We are lucky to live in a small state, population-wise, and we are lucky to have poll workers and election judges who have a degree of familiarity with the folks who show up to vote, which gives an added degree of safety and confidence. But just to be extra safe, in recent years I've added a few extra layers of security. One of them is a feature called the post-election audit. We use the State Board of Canvassers, which includes the Attorney General, the State Auditor, and the Superintendent of Public Instruction. I convene this group and act as secretary, and in the weeks after the election, we randomly choose races and precincts to be hand-counted by a county committee formed by the county commissioners. These county committees compare the hand count results to the machine tabulated results. We started this practice in 2010, and it's been a tremendous success because we have yet to find any irregularities with election returns. We've added a few other security measures. We've instituted new rules about training for election administrators by increasing the number of hours of training each year that election workers must have. In addition, we are offering election security webinars for county election officials, and we just had the first one this week. And just for good measure, a few years ago, we created a recount procedure guide, which we provided to all counties as guidance so that recounts are conducted uniformly among the 56 counties. I was hoping we would be able to wipe out the last statewide recount of the books, which was my first race for state superintendent in the 2000 election. No such luck. But it ensures that we won't be disorganized like Florida in 2000. There will be no hanging chads in Montana. We are prepared. All of these measures have created an extra degree of confidence that the public can have in our election outcomes. I think voter confidence is extremely important. Finally, let's talk about transparency. I'm going to brag a little here and say that I've made my office as open to the public and the press as any elected official in the state's history. In fact, I'm obsessive about it. Anyone who has ever interacted with my office knows this. It's the librarian in me. Everything is open and searchable. I try to personally work with anyone that seeks my help. My favorite time of year is when candidates come to file for office, and I sit with each one and personally help them with their paperwork. My door is always open to them, and open to reporters and legislators and candidates of both parties. There is no piece of information the public is ever denied upon request. I should mention that last week, Ballotpedia released its annual State Election Agency report, which measures all state election agencies on the thoroughness with which they provide information to the public. We came in number 5 in the nation. 5. Additionally, we have created and expanded on a voter information service which we call My Voter Page, or MVP, that allows any voter to check their voter registration information, check and track the status of their absentee ballot, view or print a sample ballot, and find their polling place. This service is available online or as a mobile app and has become a very popular tool for voters, especially the military. They know for sure that their vote has counted. We also have a newly designed election night reporting system. This is a website we initially unveiled in the 2010 primary election. The updated and redesigned site for the primary this past June was well received and everybody really enjoyed it. It has every bit of information, sortable and searchable. Data wonks, journalists, and political types can spend hours on the thing. I don't know why they do what they do. I think that's crucial because elections can only function with the confidence of the citizens. If voters have the ability to be engaged and plugged in to what we do, we received a ton of fan mail about the election night reporting system in the days after the primary, from Republicans, Democrats, other parties, and the press. So that's an overview of where we are as far as elections and voting in Montana. To recap, our elections are accurate, as proven every election by the post-election audits. Our elections are secure, requiring ID from all voters at the polls and signature verification for every single absentee ballot. And no voting system or counting systems are connected to the internet at any time. Our elections are accessible with special features for absent military and overseas voters and disabled voters. Our elections are transparent. All records and processes are open to the public. Before we finish, though, I'd like to describe some things that we need to add to our system going forward. Some unfinished business that can make Montana elections even stronger. That is mostly in the hands of the legislature. I would ask our legislators to work with us rather than against us when we try to make it easier to vote in Montana. Last session, the legislature voted down every bill we proposed to strengthen voting rights, and it was done on mostly party lines, including our elections cleanup bill. We proposed an online voter registration system, something that 40 other states have or are currently working on building. What's worse, they voted it down 3 sessions in a row. Online voter registration is the reason we ranked 12th in the Pew study. The folks at Pew told us that if we had online voter registration, we would rank in the top couple of states in the United States. The legislature tried to eliminate election day registration by statute and then by ballot measure, but the voters of Montana overwhelmingly voted to keep it in place. They tried to send the governor a bill which created needless voter ID requirements, like what we've seen in some other states lately. Fortunately, Governors Bullock and Schweitzer voted down these bad ideas. The legislature even rejected a bill for 4 sessions in a row, that would have allowed high schoolers aged 16 and 17 the opportunity to serve as election judges at polling locations, which we proposed because the average age of poll workers is very high and we need to get the next generation involved. To give you some contrast, while they were voting down this bill on a partisan basis, I was busy developing a civic program with a terrific interactive webpage that the schools are now using and anyone can use to encourage young people to engage in elections and government. In addition, every month for 8 years, we have sent out nearly 1,000 voter registration forms, along with a fact sheet about voting in this state to every Montanan on their 18th birthday. We call it our 18 and Ready to Vote program. Just as we teach kids about history or U.S. government, we need to be showing them firsthand about voting. We need the legislature to help us with this, rather than stand in our way. As I intimated earlier, the job of Secretary of State is about as much fighting against bad ideas as it is supporting good, forward-thinking, smart ideas. So I'm going to be optimistic and say that I hope the legislature will be more thoughtful and reasonable about elections and voting in the next session. We will see. As I mentioned, I'm an optimist and I always will be. Finally, let me describe one last big idea that I'm proposing to the legislature before I leave and asking them to give it very serious consideration. Even though I won't be in office when they consider it. It's a vanguard idea. It's called automatic voter registration. This is something that many European nations have and a few states will soon be using. It's a very simple concept. If you are a citizen of Montana with a Montana's driver's license or Montana ID, you are automatically on the voter rolls and you can just show up and vote on election day. Present proper ID and your name will be on the list. Just that simple. It's not only good for voters, but it would make it obsolete a huge amount of bureaucracy, and it would save substantial taxpayer money. It's hard to understand why anyone would oppose it. If we adopted it in Montana, we'll be among the first few states in the nation. We'll be ahead of the curve, but not for long. In fact, North Dakota has always had a form of automatic voter registration. Any North Dakotan just shows up and votes. So there you have it. That's my report about the state of Montana's elections, and I hope you found it informative and helpful. I think the facts speak for themselves, and it is great news all around. We have a world-class election system, one of the best in America. It's open, accessible, reliable, secure, and transparent, and we work very hard to make it so. I hope to continue to make it better, even these next few months before I leave office. I promise you, I will remain active and outspoken long after I'm gone, because there isn't anything in all of government that is more important than elections and voting. Thank you for coming. There are voter information pamphlets hot off the press, Montana my voter page cards, and also voter registration cards, in case you have to change your address or anything about your voter registration. So, thank you.